it just proves what a back-ass words mentally retarded world we live in. That people have to get on YouTube and explain to motherfuckers why it is not right and why it is not fair for a fucking male. I'm not gonna call him a man because he's definitely not a fucking man. For a fucking male to get into a boxing ring at the Olympics and fight a woman. I mean, this should go without saying. I actually think that fucking coward, and that's what he is. He's a fucking coward. He's a bigger coward than SWV. I think that coward should have to go. Well, it probably wouldn't go more than one round, but that coward should be forced to go get in the ring with somebody like, I don't know, Tyson Fury, Canelo Alvarez, Triple G, Mike Tyson. You know, get him in there and give him a taste of his own fucking medicine. I actually feel sorry for that poor girl. I really do. I mean, she's probably busted her ass for fucking years to get to the point to where she can go to the Olympics and fight for a gold medal, and then she gets just blatantly cheated out of it. It's just wrong. It's fucking wrong. And it's not just in boxing, in any fucking sport that requires physical strength and speed and agility. 99.85% of the time, the male is going to win every time. It's just, it's bullshit. I had to say that. I know Damp Wolf was saying something about this very subject too. I got to finish watching his video. But yeah, that's a fucking crock of shit. You know, you'd think people would have figured it out back in the late 90s on celebrity boxing when everybody thought that China was going to whoop Buttafuoco. And that ain't what happened. Buttafuoco whooped the shit out of China. Sure did. Last thing. Let's not get it fucked up, folks. I'm not here to white knight. I'm not here to cuck. You know, on the streets, on the Ave, in real life, you know, in a bar situation, whatever. I'm of the opinion, and I've schooled my sons on this as well. You don't ever put your hands on a woman first. But if a woman in real life, not in a sanctioned boxing match, that's not the same thing. But in real life, if a woman steps to you and puts hands on you like a man, you have every fucking right to defend yourself and put hands right back on that bitch. Equal rights, equal lefts. I'm done. Number 18.
Who tells the story of Susan Atkins' confession to the world through these two mafia-linked lawyers, Caballero and Caruso. If that isn't suspicious, furthermore, as you said briefly, and I can't get into all of it, with Norman Mailer, as you know, and maybe your listeners know, Norman Mailer was an ardent believer that there was a conspiracy against Kennedy and that Oswald was not the sole assassin. Then he comes out with this book, Oswald's Tale, who commissioned that book to be written, who paid for it to be written, who supplied the research for it? Lawrence Schiller. So Lawrence Schiller basically paid Norman Mailer to recant his anti-Warren Commission beliefs and print a book that basically concludes Oswald acted alone, basically underscored the lone nut theory. So you can put the pieces there. To me, that's extremely suspicious pattern of behavior.
Is it possible that his work is being sponsored in some kind of a nefarious way?
I can't prove it, but I believe it absolutely, and I'm happy to go on record to say it. It doesn't make any sense to me that this guy, he's like the Zelig of murder, mayhem, and assassination, who happens to be there every time one of these things happens. He gets Ruby's admission that no, there was no conspiracy. He's there to get Susan Atkins describing what supposedly happened in these murders. I've given you just a general idea of his history, and that, to me, is the mysterious and sinister part of this case. It's got nothing to do with brainwashed hippies or diabolical cult. It has to do with in what way is the shadow government of the United States and its media enablers putting across a grand narrative about all of these violent events that marked the 60s, all of them. Furthermore, a final thing I want to add, just to clarify how deeply fictional the story that you believe, I don't mean you, but the public, about this case. Jerry Cohen, an even more obscure person, was a journalist for the LA Times. He's who broke the story about the Manson murderers, and he's the first person who wrote about them as a savage, diabolical hippie cult who believed their leader was Jesus and who murdered people for some bizarre ideology. Jerry Cohen was a very good friend and business associate of Lawrence Schiller. Jerry Cohen was also involved as the FBI informant in the Garrison case, trying to disprove that there was any conspiracy. So there you have another figure. And Jerry Cohen also is responsible for writing this book, The Killing of Sharon Tate, that was widely distributed to the media so that even the murderers could get an idea, what is the cover story we're supposed to tell? And that was the basis of it. So this journalist, Jerry Cohen, should be looked into as well. He killed himself a few years ago, but he and Schiller worked together on the fringes of many of these controversies. So that is also very suspicious. Then we get into Bugliosi himself. Now, I'm sure most of your particular listeners know of his, gigantic book that he worked on for 20 years, Reclaiming History, which is an ironic name. Okay, so Bugliosi spent 20 years of his life trying to disprove that the mafia or the CIA or anyone but a lone nut named Lee Harvey Oswald was involved with the murder of Kennedy. He also did this ridiculous televised broadcast, which you may be familiar with, in 1986, where and this shows the theatrical nature of the whole phenomenon we're dealing with. He did a TV show where he pretended to be the prosecutor of Lee Harvey Oswald, and he, of course, wins the case. In the light of his supposed heroic victory in the Manson case, he then also proved that Lee Harvey Oswald was responsible.
Well, in that mock trial, I could say, and most assassination researchers think, that Jerry Spence was not exactly the man to put on that defense.
Well, of course. But the same could be said in the real Manson trial, which really was also an organized media event more than a real trial. Irving Kanarak, a name nobody remembers, was Manson's lawyer, and he did a horrifically bad job, almost seemingly deliberately bad job of failing as any kind of defense attorney. So that ties in with that too. But if people think this is all conspiracy theory and nonsense, I want them to consider just one fact, which you may be aware of, is before Bugliosi began to do the research to do this bizarre televised trial of Lee Harvey Oswald, in which he pretended to be Lee Harvey Oswald's prosecuting attorney, he was in contact with David Atlee Phillips, well-known CIA officer who I'm sure your listeners are very aware of his murky career, but in case there's anyone who doesn't, David Atlee Phillips was a high-ranking CIA officer who I believe, and many other researchers believe, was operated in the CIA covertly as Maurice Bishop, and in that capacity was the handler and eventual framer of Lee Harvey Oswald. And, you know, many thousands of JFK assassination researchers have amassed a great deal of evidence, including the children of H. Howard Hunt, who said that Hunt himself admitted that David Atlee Phillips was deeply involved in the JFK assassination. You're surely aware of all that.
Have you heard that E. Howard Hunt recording? It's actually pretty striking.
Right, I have, yes. I mean, it's easy to digress from one controversy to the next, but to try to stay focused on the Manson thing, but it's what I'm talking about is it's the same story. JFK cover-up, Manson cover-up, it's the same personnel covering up the true nature of two murders. I'll leave it to your audience to try to figure out why they would have a motive to do that. But to me, a huge smoking gun in giving us an idea of who was Vincent Bugliosi, who was he working for, and why. Because, yes, he was an egotistical, arrogant self-promoter and hustler like Lawrence Schiller, but he had reasons to do what he was doing. And this connection, this was found in the Library of Congress, that he was in touch by letter with David Atlee Phillips, a person directly, in my mind, and many others, connected to Lee Harvey Oswald, and one of the principal architects of the assassination and of the consequent cover-up of the assassination, was in friendly contact with Bugliosi, and there is a letter, which I'm reprinting in my book, in which basically David Atlee Phillips, CIA officer, is telling Bugliosi how to continue the cover.